Hello, this is Scott Cordell for CSC210 Database Design, and this video is to cover the exercises for Week 2, specifically Assignment 2.2, where you're going to be using the Query by Example feature in Access to come up with some design views of how to actually run queries in Access. So if you'll notice from the assignment I have on the screen here, this is using the BITS Corporation exercises that we used in previous weeks, and we're going to use the data that you've downloaded from course materials and use those instead of having to actually create all of this. Now the data that I've already downloaded here is in a folder for me called CSC210, and I've added the quarter to it so I can keep up with which quarter I'm in and which quarter I'm teaching. Inside this folder is data sets and then the weeks that we're currently going through. And then under Access is where I'll find the BITS database. So I'm going to go ahead and double click to open this. And as Access opens, if you don't have Access installed, by the way, make sure that you were using the Sullivan desktop. And I'll open this real quick just so I can show you the address. I am on the Sullivan desktop. This little marker in the middle shows me I'm using the Citrix receiver to do that. But the address you want is desktop.sullivan.edu. And when you load this, it's going to try to go through Citrix receiver. If you don't have Citrix receiver loaded, you're going to see something like this. And if you don't detect it, then it'll guide you to download, to install, and get this running. The reason I'm using this is because if I'm on Sullivan's system, then I can actually use their software, everything that they've got running within my own computer. So I'm actually on my computer using a system that's back at the campus. And so that's why I don't have to install a whole lot of stuff. In fact, with this, if I go to BITS database and double click, notice it opened up Access for me right away. And whenever I look at this, I can see that I've got all the tables that are part of it. You will need to enable content to continue with what we're doing for this and have to mark it as a trusted document. These are files that came straight from the publisher. I haven't tinkered with them or anything, but they warn you about that just in case these are files that you don't know where they came from. You really should not open them. But if you'll notice, I've got these 5 tables that if I go back and look at the first assignment we did, which was the BITS database, here are the 5 tables we're talking about. And if I open up the consultant table in Access, I should see across the top consultant number, last name, first name, everything that we've got typed in the other one, except this has data, whereas the stuff that we did in Lucidchart is no data. It's just for the design instead. All right, so back to Access. And what I want to do is show you how to get started with this. I'm going to close the consultant table because what we need to do is actually answer on page 70 question number 1 for the BITS Corporation exercises for QBE, which is Query by Example. Question number 1 is list the number and name of all of the clients. So I can go here and look at the clients and see that basically I want this column to show up and that column to show up, but none of this other. To do this with QBE, we're going to go to the Create tab in Access. Do not use the Query Wizard. It adds a lot of garbage in it, and it's really difficult to do some of the advanced stuff we'll do here in a moment. But use the Query Design, because this is where you get to specify how this is built from and every piece of it. Now this one, since they want to know the name and number, or the number and name of all clients, I'm only going to use the client table and add it to my design, and then close it. Right now we are in Design View. There are only a few views that you can use in this Query Design mode. Right now we're in Query Design. If I go over here and notice in Views, I also have Datasheet, and there is a SQL view that we'll use a little bit later. So right now, nothing will show up. If I went and ran this, can't, because I have to have at least one field that shows up. So I want the client number to show up. The easiest way to get this to happen is double-click on it, and it adds it to the grid down below. Or I can individually grab a column and drag it to the position in the grid that I want it in. If you happen to mistakenly get a column in here that you didn't want, then you've got to go right here until this arrow turns into an upside down black arrow. Click there, and now I can right click and I can cut that. So this will show me the client number and the client name and none of the other stuff like we mentioned before. Remember, this is Design View. I can even go further and drag this down and compare this with the design that we made earlier in Lucidchart. To get the results of this, I would hit Run. But I don't want your results for the homework. Now I'm going to say go ahead and run the results so you can make sure this works, and then go back and look at the data tables in your book and data designs that we did with the ER diagrams, just to make sure everything works the way that it should. But this isn't the screenshot or the view that I want. Instead, go back here to Views and go to Design View. Notice that it's normally set to go between the results, and if I click in the same spot again, it toggles right back to Design View. This is what I want to see. Now what I'm going to ask you to do is make this easy on yourself and use the snipping tool that's built into Windows 10. If you're on a Mac, there are plenty of other tools to do this as well. But the reason I want to do this is I don't want all of this screen, the entire thing, and the date and time and every other program you're running and all that. Instead, change your mode to rectangular mode, and then you can select exactly what you want to show me. And I only need that much. I'm going to go up to Edit now, then go into Word on a blank document. This is the answer to number 1. I'm going to paste it, and there you have it. When I press Enter, I'm going to get an instant number 2 in Word, and now I'm going to go on and do the same thing. Now, when I'm saving these, let me go ahead and save this since we've made some work here. And let me get to this computer. Since I'm on the VDI, it's not my normal desktop here. There we go. And I want it inside of week 2. And I'm just going to call this Assignment 2.1. Sorry, I just realized it's 2.2. I'll have to go delete the wrong one here. All right, so that's it for question 1. Now back to Access, because question 2 says list the complete tasks table. Now, a couple of ways I can do this. I can just start all over and get rid of this, not save any changes because I can always run this again. And again, I don't want just this. That is the task table, but I want to see it by running a query. So the same steps again: create, query design. This time I want the task table instead of the client. And since that's the only one, I'll just hit close. It's a pretty small table. And I could do the same thing we did before. Just double-click each of these in order to drop them into the grid. I can then run them, and there's the whole table. Go back to Design View, and you could take that screenshot. Now, I do want to show you a shortcut to this. And they do show you this in the textbook. I believe it's example 3. Instead of each of these, this asterisk right here means all. If I double-click and put that there, it's saying for the task table dot, there's an asterisk, show me everything in it, and guess what? That runs and gives me the exact same thing. So either one of those answers would be acceptable for this. Now what I want to do is I want to take a new picture, new screenshot, a new snip. Same thing. I'm just going to grab this much this time. Copy that. And here is number 2. Let me zoom out just a bit so you can see sort of what we're ending up with here. Now I'm not so worried about how detailed these are. If I can see that you had the right table and you copied all your columns, just remember if you got more columns, it's going to be a wider picture. And this one's a much smaller picture. Some people try to do things that make it much more manageable instead of a screenshot like we had before. Yes, you absolutely can drag this down and take a really, really tiny screenshot to get rid of this gap that's showing up right here in the middle. So now if I take the screenshot down here, I can make it that way. And I'll go ahead and just put this by the one in Word so you can see the difference. So I could make smaller screenshots and conserve space, but remember, I'm not asking you to print this out. I'm not going to print it out. I'm going to grade it from your Word file. So these do not have to be super tiny in any kind of way. You don't have to worry about space. If you need another page, as soon as I get to the end of this one, Word's going to give me another page. So it's no big deal. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and save this. And then let's talk about how to do number 3 as well. And this will probably be the last one I'll get squeezed into this video. But here's the problem. Last time, we went over here and closed off the query and started brand new. You don't have to do that. What I can do is actually take out the task table and put whatever I need in here. This time, for question number 3, list the number and name of all clients represented by consultant number 19. That means I don't need the task table, but I do need the client table again, because it has, again, if we go back and look, and by the way, this is exactly why I had you build these diagrams. You can flip back and forth and see these things very easily. I need every client number, every client name, and consultants, but only if it's a consultant number 19. So we'll talk about how to do that in just a moment here. But first, we need to remove this. The easiest way to do this is with this show table up here. What I want to do is I want to add the client table, so I'm going to double click to add it. And notice in the back here it did add it. And then I'm going to right click on task and remove it. It also takes out whatever was attached to task down here. Now, just for the sake of making this a decent screenshot, I'm going to go ahead and open this up so we have everything. And again, I want client number, client name, and consultants, but only the ones with 19. Now this is where criteria come in. Here's criteria in your grid. I want all clients numbers and all clients names, but only if the consultant is number 19. So what I do here is I filter on number 19. So what that's going to do is show me all of that. Now just to make sure this works, of course, you're going to run it, and you can see all those are 19. I'm going to go back to Design View. If I took this out, it would show me almost the same thing we had in question number 1, all the client numbers, all the client names, and then all the numbers. So I should have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 results in the end. This is everybody. I'm going to go back and put 19 in again. And again, we should have 5 results. And we have 5 results. Again, you can look at the bottom and see that I'm looking at record 1 of 5. Back to Design View. Again, this is the screenshot that you would do. So we go over into Snipping Tool, just hit New again. And this time I got to make sure I cover that much at least. Copy. And then back to Word. Paste that. Drops in at the top of the second page. I would hit Save and just keep going that way. Now again, this week you're doing questions 1 through 16 for this, so please realize that 1 through 14 are on the bottom of page 70. The next 2 questions are at the top of 71. You do not have to do questions number 17 and 18 that are critical thinking questions, because you can't easily get a screenshot of that. It requires that you write about a paragraph or so of explanation, but we'll get to some of those. Now when you're done with this, again, I'm going to close down Access and say that I don't want anything in Query 1 to be saved, because I'll have those screenshots. And then when I close Access, everything's back to the way it was in Access. Nothing has changed. If I go back and reopen it, you'll see that I've got my 5 tables that will show up. There they are. And if I look at Queries, sorry, I forgot here we go. Let me get all. Yep, that's it. All right, so yeah, they are showing all objects. There's just no queries. They would be under here. So nothing has been stored. It's just the data and nothing else. And that's how we like to keep databases, to where the data is in one spot. All the other runs, reports, queries, triggers, all of that are somewhere else. And so that's how you're going to complete, for this week's homework, assignment 2.2, which is using QBE to actually come up with some information. Again, there's an example of what the homework looks like. It looks pretty much like what I just showed you in Word, but here's another example that you can take a look at. And again, this is Scott Cordell for CSC210 Database Design. This was assignment 2.2. Thanks for watching.